Yo, it's Zero, and this is What If Deku Was a Hanma, the full movie. And this technically won't be the full movie including all 5 seasons, because for now, we'll only go up to Season 2. With that being said, I hope you guys still enjoyed the video, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And without any more wait, let's get started.
Let's get it. I'm a trapping fanatic, that shit automatic, so I cannot turn it on or off. Bitches all on my dick, then she hop on my dick. I'm like, why you keep hopping on and off? Yo, bitch all on my dick, she be doing the most. I tell her, little bitch, she so extra. And my gun up on me, but not run up on me. Niggas, they wanna fight, they some wrestlers. And you know 30K got the mop. Sacked up, yeah, I got them knots. Act up, get your body in a box. Told the demon, you know how.
Enter the origin of Izuku Hanma. So let's just say, out of the many women that Yujiro Hanma had ran through, one of them included Inko Midoriya. Throughout history, the Hanma family was known to have a superhuman quirk, and it was their strength. And this also went perfect with their enhanced genetics. This helped them to utilize their quirk to its maximum strength. But back to Inko, she would have been mesmerized by Yujiro's strength, while Yujiro only saw her as a tool to be used, as his other sons seemed to be like failures for now. After finishing up that night, he told the woman to raise their son to be stronger than him, and all the rest of his sons around Japan. Skip ahead to a 5-year-old Izuku who was seen in school. You could clearly tell which one was him due to the Hanma genes clearly showing, as they were very dominant. The boy with red hair, well, it instantly gave it away. Izuku, though, sat alone because all the other kids were scared of his strength. Izuku had already unlocked his quirk early on, and what made the Hanma quirk different from many others, well, once it was activated, you couldn't turn it off, meaning it was more of a passive ability. As Izuku sat alone, a blonde kid walked up to him. "Hey loser, give me that toy." "Or what? You'll beat me up like the rest of the kids? You don't even look like you can fight." Bakago then grabbed Izuku by his shirt and sent a small explosion to his face, as he had also just unlocked his quirk. Izuku would roll away from the attack, and he laid on his back. His Hanma blood began to boil, feeling a fight coming his way. Izuku jumps up, and he starts to walk back towards Bakago with a new fire in his eyes, as if he had just awakened in some way. Izuku then performs a signature Hanma walk with his hands raised in the air. "Seems like you forgot your place. Let me remind you of that then, Bakago." Izuku's eyes then light up as he appears in front of the blonde, and with several punches, he knocks a small boy to the ground and stands over him. "Ouch, looks like that one hurt. Don't mind if I borrow some money for snacks?" "Of course you don't." Izuku would continue on with his day, and then instead of his mom coming in to pick him up after, he saw a taller teen with red hair. "Who are you?" "I'm Baki Hanma, your older brother." "My what?" "Come with me." Baki picks up Izuku and takes him to the underground tournament arena. This is where greatness happens. Our family thrives in arenas like this. I'm surprised you haven't met our old man yet. "Who's our dad? Mom never told me." "The strongest creature on the planet, Yujiro Hanma. He's a real piece of work, but one day I'll put him in his place. Now, on to you. Have you ever thought about fighting for money?" "For money?" "Yeah, like I could ask a friend, where he could put you in a kids division where you could fight here, for money. Let's go do a quick spar." Baki then jumps into the arena with his younger brother. "Alright, show me what you've got." They both get in a stance, and Baki notices that Izuku already knows some form of martial arts. Pretty impressive, he would think. Baki would then get in a boxing stance and does a light jab at his brother. Izuku dodges and then kicks, but as his foot lands against Baki's neck, he could tell just how strong he was, as he felt a pressure, and Izuku's reaction caused him to back away, and then Baki laughed. "Oh, so you noticed." "Yeah, our quirk, it's the same. It's amazing, but when you hone and train it every day, you become unstoppable. Let's keep going." Izuku nods, and this time, he copies Baki's stance. As Baki does another light jab, it was followed by 2 more. Izuku dodged the first one, but got hit in his face and his stomach. He fell to the ground, but he got back up. I'm not done yet. There it is. That Hanma look. You look eager to fight. Almost like you've been waiting your whole life for this type of challenge. I can relate, to a degree. Baki looks down at Izuku as he could see his younger self back when he had fought their father. The two go back and forth for hours until Izuku is lying flat on his back, completely tired. Baki will pull out a cell phone and he starts to call someone. All that can be heard is yelling from the other end. Hey Izuku, let's go. Okay. Izuku will try to stand, but his legs feel weak as he will fall back to the ground. As he was trying to force himself back up, he looked up to see his older brother leaning over, and he would climb on his back. Izuku and Baki keep talking as Baki walks him all the way home. When they got outside his house, Inko was already standing there. Izuku would get off and walk to his mom, waving to his brother as he would leave. Inko would be so angry that Baki just took him to a place like that, as she didn't know how many fighters had died there. She didn't want Izuku to see it until he was older, but now it was too late. She would then try to talk Izuku out of fighting in the younger kids division, saying he could be killed, but Izuku was already inside his room figuring out how he was going to train. She saw the boy grab some boxing gloves and a bag that he had on his back. Where did you get those? From Baki, Mom. I need to start practicing. He says I have 2 years to train until my first tournament, and the people I will fight have been fighting since they could walk. I'm already so far behind, so I need to catch up. Inko kneels to her son, begging him not to fight, but she then sees the look on his eyes. As she would try to convince him, you don't have to live that lifestyle. We can start over. We can leave this all behind us. You can grow up a normal kid, maybe even become a pro hero with your quirk. Izuku looks at his mom as he would then push her hands off of his shoulders. Baki told me that one day, well, Yujiro's offspring have a purpose, and one day they have to fight him, and we have to beat him. So that's why I'm going to train to do so. I'm going to master as many fighting techniques as I can, and build a lot of muscle like Baki to increase the power of my quirk. Mom, I'm a Hanma, and this is what I was destined to do. She starts to tear up and goes into another room, leaving Izuku only to himself. Day in and day out, Izuku trains his body and his quirk to get stronger and stronger, until we finally arrive on the day of the tournament. 2 years had passed, and you could clearly tell that these 2 years were spent training, as Izuku looked completely different, with more muscle, and he was taller. He was waiting outside his house with a gym bag by his side, and then a black-tinted limo pulled up to his house. The window would go down as it reveals Baki, who is sitting inside, and Izuku would smile getting in. You ready for this? It won't be like anything you've done before. The kids here are trained to kill, so you have to be ready for that. Izuku nods, listening to the advice of his brother as they go to the destination. The two get out of the limo and they head inside. Once they get inside, Izuku's eyes would light up, seeing all the flashing lights around him that reflected hundreds of people, and it shined down on the arena. More people were just looking at him as they were surprised to see Baki walking with another fighter that kind of looked like him. He looks back up at his brother, feeling a hand on his shoulder. Don't let it psych you out. Once you start fighting, it's only you and your opponent. Baki then takes his brother to a waiting room with a TV, and they wait for the first match to be announced. After a couple of minutes, the announcer would say, we have a lot of new fighters this year, but sadly not enough. So the winner of the third round will automatically go to the finals. But for the first round, we have a kid who hails from excellence. His family is known to pack a punch. Introducing Izuku Hanma. Everyone was silent as Izuku walks out into the arena wearing a red and white shorts, just like Baki. And when he stands in the middle of the arena, many start to talk about his height, and the announcer would ask how old he was. I'm only 7. Everyone then stood silent as they shocked, as this division was for ages from 10 to 14. The announcer continued on after coughing, and his opponent, he would say, is someone coming from the Eastern Temples, introducing Ichima, the monk. a bald teen would walk out into the arena, towering over Izuku. Are both fighters ready? Each of them nod, getting in a stance. Then let the fight begin. Ichima flips into the air, trying to crush Izuku with his foot, but Izuku dodged with grace, looking up at his opponent, and as he was being pulled down by gravity, he landed an uppercut that sent him back into the air. The monk then landed on his back, confused. Where did that strength come from? He jumped back up, and now he stood straight up. Alright then, let's see how you do against this technique. The older teen starts to walk around Izuku, creating after images of himself to try to confuse him. Oh really? Is that it? I got you now. Izuku stares straight forward and then begins to follow one of the Ichimas as it walks around him. Suddenly from behind him, the real one appeared, jumping out to hit him. Izuku was kicked in the side, causing his form to be messed up, and then another kick, and another. As these after images continued again and again, Izuku would be hit by multiple attacks, not having a counter for this technique just yet. It got to the point where you could see bruises on his neck and chest from how many times he was kicked and punched. Izuku then started laughing for some reason, and Ichima would call him crazy. Izuku stood up, and this time he closed his eyes, waiting for the next attack. Ichima took this as a sign of Izuku giving up, so he jumped in once again. Izuku smirked, ducking under this attack and hitting his opponent with a right hook. Ichima was caught off guard, and now he was off balance as Izuku took this opportunity to land punch after punch with an overhand strike, and then he followed this up with 3 fast jabs. And just when Ichima thought it was over, Izuku ducked down and his eyes began to glow while he landed another uppercut that was way stronger than the first one. And this one knocks Ichima all the way into the air as he falls right on his back again, but this time he was knocked out cold. Everything stood still as Izuku began walking back to the side of his arena where his brother stood. Baki held up a hand and Izuku gave him a high five while smiling as they both will return to the waiting room while the crowd begins to go crazy. Izuku watches the next fights and he gets ready for his own, as the announcer would then say the semifinals match will be between Izuku and Beru. The two fighters enter the ring, and from first glance, he can tell that Beru is a wrestler, a sumo wrestler. His huge stature instantly gave it away, as the two fighters would lock eyes as the match would then begin. Izuku keeps his distance from the older teen, trying to gauge his strength, but after watching his fight, he already knows not to let Beru get a hold of him, as that will end it. Izuku would dodge a grab from Beru while kicking his neck. This did no damage due to his immense muscle fat and his thick skin. But Beru took his opportunity, grabbing his leg and slamming down. Izuku screams out in pain as he feels like his leg is about to be snapped in two. But using his other leg, he wraps it around Beru's throat, choking him out with his calves. Beru would then stand to get Izuku off of him. You're not half bad, Izuku, but being a Hanma won't get you this win. Get ready, because I'm about to get serious. Beru then throws Izuku off of his back, and Izuku lands, as Beru then gets low to the ground holding his hands out, and this time he jumps at Izuku, grabbing his legs, picking him up over his shoulders, and then he slams him on his back, shaking the whole arena. Izuku would then be put in a headlock, but as his face begins to turn red, he remembers what he's fighting for. He needs to win this, so he grabs his opponent using as much strength as he can, flipping him over his shoulder into the ground. But he didn't let go of the man's hand, as he would then jump on his back, and he dislocates his arm while he laid on the ground. Izuku is then declared the winner, and he walks back to rest before the final fight. However, someone steps in front of him. A taller teen with more muscle and a scar on his cheek stepped up to Izuku. My name is Riku, and I don't feel like waiting for the fight, so how about we just finish things right here? You're in my way. Oh yeah, tough guy? What are you gonna do about it? Izuku's eyes begin to glow red as a strength not seen before came out of him because his veins began to pop and his muscles began to flex. He jumps into the air and grabs Riku's face, catching him off guard as Izuku would slam his face into his knee so hard that it cracks his skull, causing blood to come out of his nose and ears. Riku falls to the ground while Izuku wipes some of the blood from his nose off of his chest. And then the announcer would just declare Izuku Hanma the winner, and he would ask what he wants his fighting nickname to be, as Izuku would think about what one of his classmates called him. So he would say Deku. So from this point on, I'll be referring to Izuku as Deku, unless called different by any other characters. And here is where we'll also have the time skip into the regular timeline. Enter the preparation for UA. During the time skip, Deku never stopped training his body, so his quirk would become stronger and stronger. As they sat in class, listening to their teacher who walked in telling them about schools and many schools that they want to go to, the only person in the class that wants to go to UA is Bakago. Everyone would turn to Deku, who was sleeping. The person in front of him would wake him up, as the teacher would ask what he wants to do, since he didn't submit anything, and Deku would just look out of the window. I don't know. I have a goal, but I don't need to be a hero to meet my goal, and I don't need to have a certain job to meet the goal either. So, maybe I'll travel the world and learn all the fighting styles I can. Maybe I'll become a boxer. What could being a hero possibly do for me? It sounds like a waste of time. I just want to fight strong people until I fight the strongest. Everyone turned, glaring at Deku. As he would then lay his head back down, Bakago would put his foot on his desk. You're such a loser, Deku. You could never become a pro hero, even if you wanted to. Deku would then begin to snore, and Bakago would grab his hair, lifting him up. Bakago, you want to know something? You're starting to piss me off. Deku then throws a punch over Bakago's shoulder and hits him in the face, sending him across the room to the front. At the end of the day, Deku leaves school and takes a shortcut to the boxing gym in town. As he walks under a bridge, a slug monster then wrapped around him. Don't you have a nice strong body, kid? Don't mind me while I take it. As if you could. Deku slams his back into a wall, causing the slug monster to get off of him. After that, he backs up, getting in his signature stance. Let's dance, hotshot. The slug monster rushes in again, but someone speeds past Deku and gets rid of it with one punch, putting it in a bottle. Deku looks at the tall man with blonde hair. No need to fear, 'cause I am here. Citizen, are you okay? Deku walks over to All Might and grabs him by his shirt. You just cost me a fight, so you're gonna have to take his place. I don't care how strong you are, and I don't care who you are. Fight me right now. All Might would think that this kid is insane, but then quickly is forced to duck under a punch that would have hit him. I don't know what you're trying to gain from this, but I have more important stuff to do than to fight a kid. All Might then runs from out of the bridge and jumps into the sky, as he uses momentum to carry him through the air, looking down to see Deku running on the street below while looking at him. How is he? And while All Might is distracted, the slug monster slipped out of his pocket, falling to the streets below. All Might would jump to another roof and then another, as he kept doing this until he lost sight of Deku, but by that time, he was back into a small, weaker form, because his time limit had ran up. And Deku was on the ground looking around scoffing as he would start to head towards the gym. As he did get close to it, he hears an explosion. He turns, seeing buildings on fire and the slug monster with Bakago. Pro heroes try to get in close to save him, but they can't. Deku's blood then starts to boil as he jumps over the police and firemen there. He bursts into a sprint and punches Bakago so hard that he flies through the slug monster and into rubble. Deku then stands there right in front of it once again. Let's finish right where we left off. The slug monster then tries to grab Deku, but he dodges and kicks it in the face. Shockwaves of the kick are so strong that they blow away the flames in that direction. Deku then lands 4 quick jabs followed by a cross punch, and this sends the slug monster to the ground. Deku looks around, and then he sees a sandwich container that was on the ground. And he picks it up, and in minutes the slug monster is compacted within it. Deku then walks to a policeman and hands it to him. There you go. Make sure to hang on to it tight, not like the last dude who had him. He's very slippery. A bunch of people and pro heroes try to praise Deku, and the cameraman try to get him, but he walks into the boxing gym nearby. When he walks in, he's met by a punch from his brother. "You're late. So, now you get punished. Hop in the ring." Deku grabs his gloves and now both of them stand inside of the ring. The two go back and forth for hours until Baki lands an uppercut to his stomach, then knocks him to the ground. Once they finish up, the two will sit in the ring talking. Baki would then say, "Hey Zuko, I've been meaning to tell you. I'm going to America for a little bit, so find some stuff to keep you busy." "Wait, why are you leaving? Can't I go with you?" "You can't. I have this feeling deep down that you're going to be something different. You're going to go down a different path of strength. But trust me, I'm always a phone call away. Now, get home. You know how your mom is." Deku stands up with tears in his eyes. And then he goes to hug Baki. After that, he leaves, promising to get stronger and to beat him the next time that he comes back. As Deku was approaching his house, a skinny blonde man stands in his path. All Might would tell him about his injury and his quirk and ask if Deku wants to be his successor. Deku ponders on it and wonders how much stronger he could become. So, he asked if this quirk will allow him to fight stronger people, and All Might would nod. Deku would say he's all in, but he sees a piece of hair in front of his face. He eats it and says it can't be worse than his brother's cooking, and the next day he's told to meet up with All Might at a beach. So I'll just skip to that rather than go over any boring events. Deku arrived in red shorts thinking that he and All Might were gonna spar, but what he sees is a trashy beach. All Might then tells Deku that his strength is amazing, but his test is to clean up the beach before the UA exams. He has 10 months in total, so he better get started. All Might would leave and he would say that he'll check on him in about a week. By the day 5, the beach was already clean, and Deku just had to wait for All Might to come. When the pro hero did arrive, he was surprised that the beach was so clean already. He looked down at Deku, who was shadowboxing, and he sees that he's losing somehow. Whoever he's fighting must be strong. He goes down and he would tell Deku to stop as he asked him to use the quirk. He told him to think of water pouring into a glass. As Deku closed his eyes thinking, the quirk would activate as red lightning then started to come from around his body. All Might would be shocked. He thought Deku would only try to use his quirk in one place. Instead, he used it all over his body, maintaining it too. All Might would ask how did he come up with this, and Deku says it's like building muscle. You want an even amount throughout your whole body, rather than just have big arms and tiny legs. All Might laughs and asks Deku to walk forward, and Deku smirks, saying he could do more than that. He then runs all over the beach, and it leaves shockwaves behind him, sending sand into the air and around. He then starts to shadow box once again, and the wind coming off of his punches and kicks allow water that was on the shore of the beach to be blown back. All Might would watch him closely, trying to figure out how much he was using, and right now, All Might gives a rough estimate of about 65%. This was amazing, as they were far ahead of the schedule that he thought. Deku then stops and asked if this was all. All Might would say, what does he mean? He still has to pass the UA exams. All Might then explains to Deku that he needs to get a hero license from the school in order to hunt down villains. Deku nods and says he'll pass the exam with ease. He might not even have to use All Might's quirk to get in. Deku then says he'll keep training until the exams, so let's just skip forward to the 10 months later. Deku arrives in front of the tall building and says it looks kinda lame. He continues to walk forward and wouldn't trip so he wouldn't meet Otaraka. As he heads inside, he hears his name being called by someone, and he turns around to see Bakago, who didn't want him to be there and didn't think he would be there, but Deku ignores him walking in. They go into the first part, which was the written test, but then the practical exam comes with the robots. After the rules are explained, all the participants stand in front of the open gate, and without signal or sign to go in, Deku jumps over everyone and kicks through 4 small robots. President Mike then tells them that there's no point to wait for a battle. Deku then goes through, crushing robots with his strength alone. Having a passive, superhuman quirk was actually really helpful. Almost to the point where people thought he was cheating. This was until they noticed the 0-point robot. Deku smiled, thinking about All Might, and activated One for All. Shockwaves blow through the area, shaking the ground as many people will fall. Jumping towards the giant robot, he released punch after punch, and with a barrage of light jabs that sent the robot flying back into pieces as it was completely destroyed. This is when the test was finally over, and Deku stood up and yawned as he was bored. It didn't feel like a real test to him. Destroying robots was fun, but it was lame, as fighting people was more exciting to him. A couple of days later, Deku would get the holographic message from All Might, who tells him that he scored the highest on the exam and that he's been accepted. Deku smiles as he already knew he passed, but he didn't know how he got rescue points. He didn't rescue anyone. Now, all that was left was to wait for the first day of school. Enter UA High School. The first day of school arrived, and Deku headed into the building once again. Finding his classroom, he opened the door to see Bakago getting yelled at. Deku starts to laugh, causing Ida to turn around and ask what's so funny. Deku then states how there's no point to yell at someone who doesn't care. Bakago will remain the same no matter what. Ida would talk about the rules, and Deku walks past him to the back of the class and puts his face down on the desk. Ida then turns to Deku, yelling at him for sleeping on the first day. He can't get a future like that. Deku sits up as he would then say, I scored higher than anyone here on the exams, and I barely used my quirk. Well, my second quirk, that is. So, don't talk down on me as if you're better than me. I could beat everyone standing in this room alone. Deku then puts his head back down for a couple more minutes until a girl would wake him up. He turns his head to see the brunette. Yeah, what's up? Do you need anything? Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for saving me during the exam. Oh, so it was you who gave me those rescue points. To be honest, I don't even remember seeing you there. But hey, you're welcome. Aizawa would then sit up and introduces himself as their homeroom teacher, and he tells them to put on their gym clothes and meet him outside. This is when he explains that whoever does the worst on these tests is getting expelled. On every test that Deku did, he passed in first without even using one for all. Then they got to the ball throw, where Aizawa would toss Deku a ball, and he asked him to show off his second quirk that he was talking about. Deku smirked, while everyone stood confused, believing that he was already using that quirk. But they felt it. An immeasurable pressure coming off of Deku's body as the trees outside began to sway aggressively. Red lightning surrounded his body as he gripped the small ball. Hey Teach, how far do you want me to throw it? Send it out of the city. Deku smiled, launching the ball so hard that it left the planet. Everyone stood with their jaw dropped at Deku's strength, and the next day at school would go normal until All Might walked into one of their classes to teach. He told them to suit up like heroes and meet them at ground level. All the students did as they were told and waited on Deku as he was the last one. All Might then remembers the phone call that they had, hoping that the boy wouldn't wear his red shorts. Instead, Deku arrived in a black gi. What are you all staring at? Let's get started. All Might would explain the hero versus villain practice and announces the teams. After that, he then announces the first match, which would be Deku and Otaraka versus Bakago and Ida. As Deku and his teammate are walking through the large metal halls, they see Bakago in their way. The blonde would yell out, this is where they settle it, but Deku smiles, using 65% of One for All to bounce off the walls at crazy speed that couldn't be kept up with, landing right in front of Bakago. Time moved slow for him as he was moving so fast, so within an instant, Deku hit Bakago with a barrage of attacks and then backed away, making it seem as if he didn't even move. As time continued regular for everyone else, Deku would land back next to his teammate, as Bakago would be flung through the walls back to ground level. Ida, who was guarding the bomb, waited until he was touched on his shoulder. Then, he floated to the roof, and the bomb was secured by both teammates. Deku and Otaraka high-five and congratulate each other, while All Might tells all of them to come back to the camera room. He reviews their battle and tells Bakago and Ida what they did wrong. He then tells the two that if they wanted to fight head-on, they should have attacked together. All Might would state how right now all the other students in the class are playing catch-up to one person, as he would point at Deku, who is far above everyone here. The rest of the hero-villain practice would go the same, and the school day would begin to continue as normal. But this would be the day that someone sneaks into the school as all the reporters get in as well. The next day, Aizawa would give them the permission slip so that they could go to the USJ. So we go to that, and when they get on the bus, a frog-like girl would sit next to Deku, asking about his quirks, because he's so strong. Deku would then tell her that since he's a Hanma, as a passive quirk, he has superhuman strength, but since there was a mutation in his genetics, he gained a second superhuman ability, and that's the one with the lightning. All the students thought that was so cool, and by now, they would have arrived at the facility. They all step off to be greeted by Pro Hero 13. Aizawa would then ask 13 where All Might was, but 13 says that he was out heroing, so he's out of gas right now. Aizawa sighs as they would continue on. Deku really didn't want to come on the field trip, but All Might insisted that he go, saying that he must learn everything to be a hero, and that even means saving people. But Deku didn't really care, as how could All Might tell him to go, and he wasn't even there himself, so he wasn't really paying attention to 13 while they were talking. But suddenly, someone teleported or warped into the USJ. Aizawa looks down the steps to see a bunch of villains coming in. Deku doesn't even hesitate, jumping past his teacher and punching the first one he saw. It was one with hands all over his body. This sent the skinny man skidding across the ground. The rest of the villains then start to surround Deku, who smiled, punching them away. Aizawa jumps down into the fight, calling Deku reckless, but since Deku was so brave, this caused, well, a butterfly effect with the other students to follow him. People like Ida, Bakago, Todoroki, Kirishima, Ashido, Sero, and Shoji, and Tokiyami went to go help their teacher and classmate. With the strongest of the class fighting the villains, they were being overwhelmed. The plan was to separate them, but one person ruined that plan. Shigaraki stared at Deku with anger and disgust. He then ordered for it to come out now, as the ground then began to shake, causing all their attention to turn a certain way. Deku smiled as he could feel a real challenge coming his way. The Nomu revealed itself, and it was ordered by Shigaraki to take down the tall kid with muscle. Deku and the Nomu began walking towards each other as Aizawa would try to stop him. However, the Nomu got behind both of them and slammed Aizawa into the ground. Deku turned his head looking at the monster. "You look worse than you smell." Deku then punches the Nomu in the chest, causing it to fall to one knee. But it got up quick, doing the same to Deku. Not bad, but let's add some technique to the fight. Deku gets in a boxing stance and the Nomu rushes at him. Deku would sidestep, dodging, and he kicks the bird-like creature in its jaw. The Nomu wouldn't move or react at all, and then it would grab Deku's leg. Before anything could happen, the red-haired boy activated One for All, lifting the bird into the air and then slamming it into the ground with his leg. "Come on, you freak, show me something." The Nomu would grab Deku by his ankle and throw him into a rock. He would turn his attention to the rest of the students, but before he could do anything, Deku jumped back on its back. Then he put it in a chokehold as the Nomu began to scratch Deku's arm, causing it to bleed and leaving scars. Deku then gets off of the Nomu and goes into 65%. Now we can start a real fight. Deku and the Nomu go blow for blow until Deku starts to get faster and hit harder, using more and more of One for All. It gets to the point where each of his punches causes the Nomu to lose its footing until one punch sends it into the roof of the building as it would explode there. After the Nomu explodes on the light, the villains would start to retreat. And the reason that the pro heroes didn't come yet was because Ida didn't go to get them like before. So this was a battle won solely by the students, as Deku would look up at the area where the Nomu was hit to, and he lays on his back. What a fun fight. Aizawa would walk over to Deku, calling him reckless and telling him that he's getting expelled once they get back to school. Deku looks at his teacher and then shrugs his shoulders while he stands up. "Go ahead, I don't really care. Either way, I'm still going to be strong, and I'll keep continuing to get stronger." The police would find the captured Nomu and the villains who didn't escape. And the next day, the school would be closed. However, the teachers would be discussing Izuku Hanma. Aizawa gives all the reasons for wanting to expel him, while All Might would argue that Izuku is a top 5 hero in the future, and All Might says that if the villains get a hold of him, they could turn him to the wrong side, so it's best they keep him under their watch, so maybe just a small suspension will teach him a lesson. The principal would agree, and he tells All Might that if this happens again, they have no other choice but to expel him. All Might thanks them all for believing in his judgment, and after the meeting, he would call Izuku. He told him that he was suspended until further notice, and this is where Season 1 would end, and the school days go normal, just without Deku there, until one day, he comes back. Enter Season 2. The day that he comes back, Aizawa would announce the sports festival, as many of the students within the class would question it, saying that what if the villains attack again, and Aizawa would tell them that the sports festival is heavily guarded by the pro heroes. All the students then begin to get fired up and ready for it, but Aizawa tells them to shut up because someone has their hand raised. Deku then speaks. So, at the sports festival, is it only going to be students participating? And if we're the strongest class, then I don't want to, because it'll be boring. Sorry, Izuku, but you have to, or I'll count this as disobedience and I'll have you expelled. You're such a pain, Teach. Whatever, I'll participate. Just not for long. Well, maybe if something else happens, I'll join in. But it's already clear who the winner will be once I give up. Deku then points at Bakago and Todoroki. It'll be one of them. But if it's a team battle, I'll give it to Todoroki. Deku then puts his head back down on his desk while his class begins to get loud once again. I feel like you guys don't want me to go over the boring parts, so let's just skip to the day of the sports festival. Hundreds of people are gathered in stadiums to watch the freshman class of UA. Midnight would smile while pointing at the first gate while President Mike and Aizawa announce Class 1A. And it's being led by Izuku. President Mike would point out how he defeated the villains, all on his own. But Deku sighs as Bakago would then begin to yell at him again while they walk and other classes are being announced. Midnight would then ask Deku for a few words of inspiration before they get started. The tall boy walks up and grabs the mic. I'm not much of a talker, but I hope all you guys have fun. Give it your all, I guess, or you'll just look stupid. If you really want to be a hero, then show everyone watching. Everyone begins to yell with excitement and confusion, but Deku smiles. The first part of the festival is announced to be an obstacle course with 3 parts. All the students would walk over to the first gate, as they then see the gate open with a bright light in front of them. When they reach the starting point, a countdown begins, but Izuku starts before it even goes away. And he continues to walk until it was over, and then everyone speeds past him. Robots would appear attacking the students, but Deku jumped over them to avoid detection. However, he saw one kid that destroyed a 0-point robot, as now Todoroki was in first because he froze it and let it fall. Bakago would be in second as he was easily able to fly over with his explosions, keeping up. Everyone was surprised that Deku was in dead last, as he was beginning to stretch while watching everyone else, and he was walking with his hands behind his head. And lightning began to surge around his body as he got bored, and in a flash, he vanished from the cameras. Deku went through the first part with the robots, and shockwaves are just caused by him running by. The next part was already done by Todoroki and Bakago, as Todoroki created an ice bridge to get across the platform, and Bakago followed with his explosions that propelled him forward. As these two were about to reach the other side, a red blur flew past them, and Deku stopped. As he looked back at them, Bakago saw his chance and grabbed onto Deku's arm. And then the redhead stood back up as he would launch him. And Todoroki was already looking at him. How about we fight too? Todoroki would try to run past Deku, but the teen appeared in his way and kicked him so hard that it sent him back into the rocks. Ice is then sent his way, but Deku dodges with ease. Yelling is then heard from behind as Bakago is coming back, but he turns around, hitting him with an uppercut. More ice is then sent his way, but using a small portion of One For All, he was easily able to kick it away. And Deku noticed that the rest of the students are coming their way as well, so he begins to go to the minefield as he picks up one of the mines, and it explodes in his face. After that, he continues to walk through while others are blown away. Eventually, Deku makes it to the end, but he lets a lot of people pass him. So he comes around 10th place this time, and Todoroki and Bakago would ask why Midoriya chose not to finish first, but when the next event is revealed, they understand, and since Bakago finished first, he has the biggest bounty on his head. As Todoroki starts to form his team, this time Deku was on it. I'm not actually the biggest fan of this event, so I'll actually skip to the real tournament. The first match would of course be Deku versus Shinso, and Deku looks at who he's fighting, and without words being exchanged, he puts him in a chokehold, and Shinso would try to free himself, but he can't, as Deku's grip is just too strong, and he's knocked unconscious. But he then feels his body moving before he was fully unconscious, as he was then dropped to the floor outside of the arena, meaning that he lost in only minutes. The next fight would go the same, as then we have Deku sitting in a waiting room, waiting to fight Todoroki. He had actually planned to let him win, as this was the part he wanted to give up on, so that Todoroki could fight Bakago. This was until his phone rang. He picks up and listens to the voice. "Hey little bro, I'm just calling to check on you. You're doing great at UA. I didn't know you wanted to be a hero. Right now I'm in a hotel watching your fight, so show off for me." Deku would start to cry, telling his brother that he'll go all out for him, as then he walks down the halls where he would come face to face with Endeavor. As the man tries to speak, Deku pushes him out of his way as he would go straight forward to the ring. As he gets closer and closer, he takes off his gym uniform, showing his red shorts that were given to him by his brother that he always wore under. I could care less how I look to the hero world. Right now, someone very important is watching to me from across the seas. And that means you're probably watching too, old man. Far away, on the other side of Japan, in a luxury hotel, we see Yujiro Hanma looking at the TV with the sports festival on it. Let's see if the kid's a disappointment like the rest. Deku walks out as his name is being called, doing the Hanma walk with his hands raised in the air with his muscles flexed while his eyes glow red. As he walks out, President Mike would ask his partner about that stance, as Aizawa tells everyone that before coming to UA, Deku was actually a boxer from the age of 6, and Todoroki walks out with anger on his face as he wants to defeat Deku so bad, and the fight starts as ice is being sent as Deku, and Todoroki looks in that direction, but he was gone. From the corner of his eye, he could see it though, as behind him, Deku lands a powerful right hook to his side, as Todoroki then gets the wind knocked out of him and another punch hits him in his face, allowing another kick to be followed by that and hits his side again. In his head, he would think about his training. Sure, he was hit before, but these punches, they were different. These punches felt like they would crack his bones upon every strike, and Deku would go for an uppercut, but he was quickly frozen by his opponent. Todoroki backed up, and he watched as the ice began to crack, and the eyes of Deku glowed more intensely as Deku rushed out of the ice at Todoroki, who would dodge, but then he was grabbed as he was flipped over him, and he lands on his back as he held Todoroki down on his side, not allowing him to use his ice. Todoroki then began to scream as Deku would hold his arm, bending it back as he's about to break it, and he would tell him that there's only one way to save himself. Deku then says that he gets his quirk from his father too, but he's not his father. It's all upon the user, not the quirk. Todoroki will begin to have more and more flashbacks, but suddenly, flames burst from his other side, causing Deku to jump back as Todoroki stands up with both ice and fire coming off of his body. But then, he says he'll only use his fire side if Deku goes all out as well. So, Deku would not, activating his 65% of One for All, and there was no point to holding back anymore, especially if Todoroki wanted to fight him at his strongest. And as the two begin to rush at each other, this is when the pro heroes try to step in, but Deku was too fast, dodging the cement that was sent his way as well as the ice, and then a huge explosion happened in the middle of the arena. But when the smoke goes away, Deku stands with his fist raised in the air while Todoroki laid on the ground outside the stadium. The boy would try to stand, but he can't as he coughs up blood, as his ribs were all broken from Deku's last attack. The next matches would go the same, While Deku watched Bakago's match, he told his classmates about quitting. But he can't now, as two special people are watching. They will question who the first person was, and Deku responds with his older brother Baki Hanma. And they would ask who the second was, as he then tells them to look that way as he points at someone. He points at a big muscular man with red hair and a black suit on, as all his classmates then have fear struck in them. Just looking at that man made them shake. They could tell it was his father, but why was he here? Deku then looked at them with the most serious expression on his face. Whatever happens after the final match, just don't do anything and stay put, or you'll endanger your own life. Deku walks to go to the waiting room, and then the finals would arrive. He walks out into the stadium to see his opponent glaring at him, and when the fight starts, Deku intends to end it, knowing that another fight may be coming. So, he grabbed Bakago, throwing him out of the arena, winning with a ring out. Midnight would begin to declare Deku the winner, but he stopped her as he grabbed the mic and pointed at his father. I know you're watching, so let's just get started. Yujiro smiled, flipping down as all the pro heroes wondered what they should do, but many of them looked to All Might, who was in no condition to fight. It's even said that Yujiro could go blow for blow with him, so what could they do? The man begins to walk towards his son until they are face to face. So, looks like you have a pair. What are you doing in a school? I told your mother to make you stronger, not smarter. If you really want to waste my genetics, at least go make some money. What are you doing here is pitiful. Are you going to keep running your mouth? Or are you actually going to show me something, old man? I want to know why they call you the strongest. Yujiro begins to smile and then uses the palm of both his hands to smack Deku on the side of his head. This causes him to fall to the ground, seeing a bright light, as his brain would be shaking in his head. But he forced himself to stand, and right now, he has a concussion. Deku gets in a stance and goes for a kick on his father. Yujiro doesn't move, letting the kick hit his neck, and then shockwaves are sent through the air. Not bad for a half pint, but you still aren't strong as Baki or Jack. This is when Deku jumps back, going into one for all, but as he tries to punch his father Yujiro, he dodged and then punched him to the ground, knocking him out. After that, he scoffed while shrugging his shoulders and leaving the arena. No one could stop him, as he was on the same level as All Might, and right now, because of All Might's injuries, I'd say he's above. When Deku wakes up, he was in the hospital-like room with an old woman, as she tells him that they waited to do the award ceremony for him. It's only been about an hour, and she was impressed because of his genetics that he recovered so fast. Deku gets up, and he receives his first place medal, and all around Japan, villains are keeping their eyes on him, Bakago, and Yujiro. After this, though, the students get their internships, and All Might would tell Deku to choose Gran Torino, so he does. And I think a lot of this will go the same, except for the training part, because Deku already knows how to use one for all. So, let's actually start with the Hero Killer arc. As the two ride on the train to get closer to Hosu, a Nomu jumps through the train, and its head is quickly crushed by Deku's hand. Come on, old man, this is our stop, as Deku would then jump out of the moving train to the streets to go help people. He already knows that the Hero Killer is in this area, so he goes out to find him, and he tells Gran Torino that he's going to find his friend, even though he's not. We go to an alleyway where Ida and the pro hero are cornered, as the Hero Killer Stain would then look at Ida holding his blade. But as he jumps towards him, because of his previous injuries and Stain's pressure, Ida isn't able to move. So, as the blade is about to make contact, Ida vanishes, and Stain is confused because he looks back to his left to see Deku holding both of them. Good, I made it in time. So, that's the Hero Killer. Oh, and he has a sword. Hey, Hero Killer, swords don't work on me unless you have some crazy strength. Just some advice for the future. Ida was confused on why Deku was taunting him, but then he saw Deku's other hand with his phone in it, and this is when he sends out his location to Todoroki. Stain and Deku rush at each other, but Deku allows himself to get cut. However, the blade can't go through his thick skin and muscle. Now, What did I tell you? Stain looks up to see a fist coming right at him, and there was no time to dodge, so he was sent into walls that were cracked by the impact. Oh look, he's not so tough. Don't tell me the fight's over already. We were just getting started. How about I show you something I learned? Deku gets in his usual stance, activating One for All, as he throws a punch through the air, but the air then hits Stain, slamming him back into the wall, as Deku would then say, One for All, Shadow Box. Deku throws rapid punches at Stain until he's knocked unconscious. After that, Deku ties him up, and this is when Todoroki arrives as well, and Deku smiles as he tells Todoroki to freeze his hands and his legs. He'll carry him. After that, they turn to Ida, who looks angry, as this was supposed to be his fight, but Deku ruined it for him. Deku would walk over and say, if you wanted to fight him so bad, you should have been strong enough to beat him before I got here. After that, Deku and Todoroki walk off to go find some pro heroes, leaving Ida there to his thoughts. Eventually they find Endeavor, who takes Stain to the police, and this is when Shigaraki would leave the area, seeing as how everything is always getting messed up by Deku. Now, when the students return to school, they would be getting ready to take their final exams for the year. Everyone starts to form study groups, but Deku continued to sleep, dreaming about his summer vacation. A lot of the students would talk about traveling for their summer vacation, but Deku knew exactly where he was going, as his goal for the summer was to train with his father, Yujiro Hanma. And this is where I want to end this what if. Sorry if this one's a little bit shorter than my usual ones, but I just feel like I didn't want to post a crazy long video just for it to flop, you know? Anyways, if you are here and made it to the end, consider subscribing and liking the video. With that being said, this is Zero, and I'll catch you all on the next one.